Kieran Gillen and Guiu Villanova send the Eternals on an important mission as Phastos begins work on creating their own god, while Druig realizes that trying to kill all of the mutants is a lot harder than he thought. Kieran Gillen continues to chug away at Judgment Day with an issue that shows us the other side of the mutant battle from Judgment Day issue 2, and how the mutants had a little unknown help from Ikaris and his Eternal squad, who are currently busy literally building their new god to worship. I like how last issue was narrated by the progenitor, and we here switch back to the machine and how it's reacting to everything that's happening on its surface, being that the machine is Earth. It's interesting to see how the machine is torn with who to help. Like, it's programmed and sort of forced to bend to Druig's will, being that he's the prime Eternal, but also it's helping out the other Eternals who are against Druig and kind of rooting for them. It's also a lot of fun because the machine, unlike many of the other Eternals, is very modern in its way of thinking and the way it speaks to us, comparing each party involved to like a group in an RPG and how each group has different stats. And I liked that way of explaining the whole Judgment Day thing, and it's quite an easy and really understandable way to explain what exactly is happening. This group has this stats, and this group beats this group who has this stats. Really easy to understand. Gillen also continues the wonderful development for Ikaris in particular, and I like how he's more of a thinker now rather than a brute who will just run in and not really care if he dies or not because he'll be reborn, so he'll just punch everything until he dies basically. But now he's kind of thinking things through and coming up with plans, and it's really great seeing him fight with more grace and consideration, like how he takes down Zurus in a way that, while it doesn't kill him, it takes him off the battlefield and makes sure he isn't reborn, which I thought was a really smart way to do things. Guiu Villanova gives us a nice looking Eternal-centric art for the event, and Villanova has a really good grasp on faces and how to make them emote a lot, which can be very difficult since it's a static image. You have to really sell what's happening on the people's faces, and in this issue, particularly Druig's face, who we get a really great few close-ups of his hate, even kind of invoking a certain 1930s, 40s German dictator there at the start, his cowardice and his glee at what he is doing. My favourite sequence, however, was actually the last 2 pages where we see Ikaris burn a message into the wall of the exclusion, and I loved the little detail that the message had a kind of double effect on it thanks to Ikaris's eye beams coming from both his eyes, so it wouldn't just be a singular beam carving a word into the stone like many other comics do. So that little bit of extra detail, while wasn't needed, I love that little extra step that Villanova did, and it really shows that they cared about what they were doing. Death to the Mutants issue 1 showed us the Eternal side of the opening salvo in Judgment Day, and while nothing really big or new happened, it was great seeing the Eternals utilize some of the development that Gillen had put them through in their recent 12-issue series. I'm going to give this issue a 9.5 out of 10. Death to the Mutants issue 1 finds Machine catching us up on the rather chaotic events of the last couple of hours, with Druig calling for war against the mutants thanks to seeing them as excess deviation, Uranus being dropped on Araco to obliterate them, and the Hex now invading Krakoa. In the Myria, Sprite thinks that this is bad since she likes the mutants, asking what they will do now. Ikaris wants to stand against this injustice, but Phastos thinks it's bigger than justice since Uranus was released, comparing him to Satan, and if that was Druig's opening act, what will come next? Cersei says that in her consulting with the Avengers, which Machine knows was her way of saying she was interrogated, she found that they have a plan thanks to them creating a new god who can rewrite their nature and set them free. She shows the Eternals the designs for the progenitor they plan on building, but Phastos reminds her that they will risk war with this, realizing that they were the ones who kidnapped Mr. Sinister. Ajax says nothing, confirming Phastos' suspicion. The Eternal asks if they waited for the war to begin to start their plan, and if it's just lucky for them there was a war to take advantage of. He also begins to believe because of this, Ajax helped start this war, but she stops him, knowing that he can judge her by the results at the end of all of this, since they will have a new god and deliverance, and along the way they can save the world. Phastos relents, asking what he can do, so he leaves with Ajax and Makari to begin the creation of a new god, as the rest intend on marching to war. before. Cersei, however, says they have one more quest, knowing that they need to gain access to the bowels of Lemuria, meaning Thena will need to flirt with Crow to gain access. Thena agrees to, as she learns that everyone else is coming with them since they will be bodyguards. Later on, Crow tells the Eternals to be quick in the bowels as they overlook a giant sinkhole in the city. Thena asks what happened, so Kroll tells the heroes that this was just a byproduct of the second host returning to Earth, and this was the site of its first strike, and it's where they learned that their god does not love them. Entering the somewhat peaceful hole, Cersei activates a device she brought with her, showing that the pit isn't so peaceful as they are surrounded by strange creatures that Machine knows are physical shadows which were burned into the firmament of reality by the power of the Celestials' hate. Cersei knows that they have what she needs, and as the Eternals fight the beings, she pins one to the ground, taking its eyewitness testimony to the nature of the Celestials. Doing so makes Cersei question why they would make another of these beings, but also how could they not try and make a better one. Having gathered the necessary items, the Eternals leave the sinkhole, with Cersei telling Crow that that was horrible. Crow hopes that their new god has more clement than the old ones, and while Cersei and Thena leave, Ikaris can't wait to take the fight to Druig, but Crow doesn't think that they are free, and if they fight Druig, they will end up like the Deviants did in their Dark City, despite being heroes for doing so. Ikaris agrees, and they must do something to stop Druig, but Crow tells them that they can fight, but not to let Druig know that they did it. Knowing that with the Deviants getting dragged into it, he thought that it would be by his actions, not the Eternals, so he suggests Ikaris do something out of character. Ikaris comes up with an idea that surprises Machine, hoping that it's a good one as Ikaris heads into the subspace tunnels, soon attacked by the hidden Gilgamesh, who pins the Eternal to the wall. Ikaris asks the Forgotten One how many more stealth suits he has, as on Olympia, Druig watches the Hex attack Krakoa, surprising Druig at what they can do since it's been so long since he's seen them in action. He orders Machine to give him an update on how long they can keep this up, so Machine tells him that with Sin being the only one who is recently killed and awaiting rebirth, all 6 can still run at maximum combat potential thanks to the armories of Uranus. Druig visits Zurus, who is conducting the psychic siege on Krakoa. Zurus knows this is hard as inside his mind, the Eternal battles Xavier. Machine knows that while mutants are powerful psychics, they have fleshy bodies, which Eternals don't have, comparing the two to people in RPGs, with mutants doing a lot of damage, but Eternals having a lot more hit points, and the Eternals aren't trying to win a psychic war, they're just trying to best the mutants and exhaust them. Druig knows that the mutants will be finished once Sign is reborn fully, thinking that it must be frustrating for the mutants to be attacked by someone they cannot attack back. In the exclusion, however, Kalos, the destructor of the Oceanic Watch, senses someone is there with him, attacking the hidden Ikaris, Kingo, and Gilgamesh. Unbeknownst to Kalos, however, Sprite is also there, using the attack as a distraction to upload a temporary override to Uranus's armories to the computer, knowing the armories won't deploy until the safeguards are deactivated. Ikaris takes down Kalos and destroys the computers as Druig is shocked to see the mutants have somehow managed to breach their armories. Domo wonders who could have done this, but Druig knows there was only one person who could do this, knowing it's Gilgamesh, telling his men to get the Eternals before they escape. Ikaris and Gilgamesh meanwhile make it to Zurus' chamber, where Ikaris hits Zurus with a weapon which teleports a very small part of his brain to another dimension, leaving his mind with a missing connector, so he doesn't technically die, but he can't fight back psychically either, meaning Xavier destroys his psychic form without killing a human to see the Eternal reborn. Druig finds Zurus as Domo tells him the Hex is running on fumes thanks to not having access to the armories. Druig finds Sign is ready to deploy, so he plans on deploying her to finish off the mutants unless something else interrupts them, knowing that they can still win this. Phastos meanwhile finishes his work on the progenitor and the Celestial hums to life, speaking directly to all sentient life, but the Eternals feel it's more direct to them thanks to it being their god, and it gives them a fourth principle, telling them that they have 24 hours to justify themselves. All eyes fall on Druig on what to do for this, but he has no idea, telling his Hex to retreat to take a beat and see what's next. The Hex leave Krakoa to burn as Machine knows that Uranus would never take a beat, and Druig's mask is beginning to slip, meaning everyone knows how unsuited he is for the role of Prime Eternal, even Druig himself. Druig leaves to speak with Uranus as Gilgamesh takes down another Eternal guard, telling Ikaris that the world bleeds because of their arrogance, and they hurt humans by just existing, and while the principles have always been riddles, he knows the answer to this fourth one. Ikaris does as well, burning the message "Death to the Eternals" into the wall before leaving, as Machine knows that this will be added to the many things Druig has to think about.